We've got the latest Kyler Murray fear porn coming out. Why Cardinals fans are up in arms with the latest report about the franchise quarterback and when the team can get an extension done. We'll get into that. Plus, the scouting combine wraps up today. But we've already got some insight on some prospects you should be excited about that could be making their way to the desert this spring at the NFL draft. Cannot wait to break that down. And a pair of New York Giants are available. What should the Arizona Cardinals be willing to give up? Which one would you rather have? Alex Clancy, Bo Brock, we're breaking it all down. We're debating it, of course, right on today's episode of Locked On Cardinals.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rise up, Red Sea. What's going on? It's Bo Brock, Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Thanks for making us your first listen. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by Bet Online. Oh, man, Bet Online. Football season might be in the rearview mirror, but college hoops, it's conference tournament week. You've got the big dance coming in a couple weeks from now. You've got the NBA headed towards the playoffs. Today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season for more props, odds, lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. Man, I can't wait for the NCAA tournament. One of my favorite events, of course, every year as far as sports goes. Just boil it down, put it into a liquid form, and just inject it into my veins. That's what I'm all about. So the latest fear porn for Kyler Murray, Alex Clancy at Clancy's Corner on Twitter. Of course, follow the podcast at Locked On AZCards. Follow me at Bob Rack from Albert Breer. And Albert Breer is locked in. He's one of the best insiders as far as just writers out there, just covering the NFL. Very talented. Alex and I have both had him on our shows before. And he put out that Arizona Cardinals quarterback Kyler Murray reportedly wants his contract situation resolved between now and the NFL draft. And we kind of found that out. Eric Burkhart kind of creating an ultimatum with the statement that he put out a week ago yesterday. And, the Arizona Cardinals, I think as far as Murray goes, Breer mentions a potential trade if negotiations go south. And I think we're getting ahead of ourselves here. The Arizona Cardinals, and Cliff Kingsbury even admitted it on the Pat McAfee show that he and Steve Keim, something Alex and I talked about weeks ago, they know that their wagon is hitched to Kyler Murray, that they'll do everything within their power to make the quarterback happy. The time frame is kind of curious because we've never seen an extension reached that early, Alex.
Yeah, it's interesting because they're under the cloak of secrecy normally, and that's kind of what we're seeing now. And this is kind of the highest stakes situation we've come in contact with Steve Keim and Michael Bidwell, kind of not letting any sort of information out one way or the other. They talked at the combine, which was fine, about how Kyler's their guy, and the whole thing, that's fine. So was Josh Rosen, and these are just things that have happened in the past that we're kind of relaying here because the past tends to repeat itself. And I know I've been tough on Cliff and Steve Keim, especially during their combine talk, but the business side of it, it's old school versus new school. It's like, those two oceans are where one is saltwater and one is due to some sort of
like
I don't know, like minerals or something where the colors look just completely different. I don't know. You see it I watch Planet Earth a lot. That's kind of where we're at now. It's not oil and water, but it's two different ways going about business. And obviously it just leads to a bunch of prognostication that either they're not happy or he's not happy, or it's not going to be a future together or whatever. Albert Breer, again, yeah, as you mentioned, one of the best in the business, very level-headed, great writer, great reporter. This is going to be much ado about nothing, but it needs to be discussed because that's where we are.
As far as Cardinals fans go, and even types like Albert Breer are not, they're not going to be able to avoid this. And as far as they're in the clicks business, and anytime they're going to talk about Kyler Murray, they're going to be able to get clicks with trades. That speculation, trying to figure out, because it's going to bring in not only Cardinals fans, it's going to bring in, quarterback hungry fan bases. just having these dreams about Kyler Murray being their quarterback. And, I just don't think that Albert Breer realistically believes that the Arizona Cardinals and Kyler Murray can't come to, a mutual decision as far as what kind of mega contract he's going to sign. There's a precedent out there about what he's going to, command, what his market value is going to be. And the Arizona Cardinals, I don't know what the reasoning is. I think that Eric Burkhart obviously doesn't want any of the 2022 dollars to dry up through free agency. That's why he's pushing this right now. But this is going to be ugly. It's going to continue to be ugly until there's a pen to put to paper on a new contract. And that's just reality. It's the business side. Look at what's going on in the MLB lockout. You've got the owners and the players, and it's absolutely just it's horrible. It's worse than most divorce proceedings go. But at the end of the day, they'll come to an agreement and life will go on. And those sides that are at odds now will work together, in concert and work together, without any kind of issues. And I think the same can be said for the Arizona Cardinals. It's just this is the business side of things, and it's ugly.
Let me ask you this, and because this is somewhat unprecedented, even though it's kind of like it's a weird thing, and it's a weird way to go about it because Eric Burkhart does things, seemingly a little bit differently. He's the mouthpiece for Kyler Murray and the coach, talking out of both sides of his mouth here. Do you think Kyler Murray gets a deal before the start of the 2022 season?
I do, but also, if he doesn't get a deal done, I think he still plays.
Yeah.
We've seen way uglier situations. A lot of people, because time heals all wounds. Remember the situation with Dak Prescott? They franchise tagged him a couple times and he was furious about it. Oh, poor me. I've got to make, I'm going to make $25-30 million guaranteed this season. Where's my financial stability in the future, which is just ludicrous. But, Dak Prescott was tagged a couple times. And then once they figured it out, once they got that deal done, he's a happy camper. He continues to be the face of that franchise. And it's going to be tough sledding between now and when that deal's done. And I do think that they get it done this summer at the latest. But, between now and then, it's going to be rough because there's going to be a lot of free agent dollars that are spent. There's going to be restructuring with some key members of this team. And there's going to be Kyler Murray just having to hurry up and wait as far as his new deal. But I think it's inevitable. And no games are going to be played. And I think that's what both sides want at this point. Kyler Murray doesn't want to go into his fourth season where each season he's shown improvement. This is going to be the toughest test. He just wants to get that deal done when he's got the most leverage. And I think everybody knows that it's right now.
Yeah, no, it's true. This is, yeah, it's true. The tough part is it is going to do things to the salary cap if you give him an extension now, because he's going to want more money up front, and you can probably, transition some of that into a signing bonus, which is what we've seen every team do. I don't know if it's bad optics. I don't know if it's good or bad optics for either side. Is it bad optics for Kyler Murray if he's like, pay me now? I don't care about the rest of the team. Pay me now. Is it bad optics for the organization for not paying him now when they don't have to?
Right.
And that's kind of where, if we were both living in the same world where Steve Keim and Michael Bilbao weren't old school and Kyler Murray wasn't 25 years old, if this were like Steve Keim and Aaron Rodgers, that's a conversation you can have, because it's more, Brian Gutekunst is in the new age. Mm-hmm. He let Aaron Rodgers' favorite wide receiver go. He let his second favorite wide receiver go. And it was oil and water. This isn't necessarily oil and water. It's just it's old school versus new school, trying to come up with a deal with two different, vessels that they're doing business through.
Here's something that might, calm everybody that's being a little hysterical as far as this goes. Eric Burkhart got, the client that you would least expect an extension. Kyler Murray's the slam dunk extension candidate here. He was able to leverage Cliff Kingsbury into an extension. Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury, we weren't expecting extensions this offseason. They got their deals done. That has to give you some confidence that they're going to get a deal done with the guy that deserves it, for the most part, in Kyler Murray. Does that not give you, even though it's the people pulling the strings, but if Eric Burkhart can sell Cliff Kingsbury for 5 more years through 2027, he should be able to sell his quarterback.
Yeah, no, that's true. And that's one other thing. I know we have to move on here quickly, but like that's another thing where it's why didn't Kyler get it first?
I think just because,
or why didn't they get it at the same, like, and I know that Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury are a different package. It's apples and oranges, but it's still fruit. Like I know that it's
right,
front office and it's not
there's
player.
just no cap implications. I think that's it.
I guess that's true. But I mean, if you're going to do it as a package deal, like now, if they don't extend him, that's going to look bad.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be like, you trust this guy who is really, was a package deal with the player. The player usually wins. This is the weirdest thing. The player doesn't win here. The player always wins. He wins sooner than the coach, who has been kind of maligned with how they finished the last 2 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Keim and his drafting abilities, all these things. The Cowboys are different. They're pretty much seeded from the rest of the NFL because they're California. Like they have their own rules. It's a circus. They haven't won in 25 years, yet they're the most. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And Dak Prescott's the quarterback, and he also just came off a severe injury. Kyler Murray's had injuries, but it's not necessarily the same. And Dak Prescott's also an Adonis. Kyler Murray's a little bit, he seems to be injury prone at this point more than not, at least in the eyes of the signature guy with
Mm-hmm.
Michael Bidwell.
Yeah. I mean, to wrap things up, as far as Breer and what his report is, and it's less of a report than it's more of an educated guess and a prediction. And, a lot of people, the person who pointed this out to me was our guy, the Huck Show on Twitter. And he DM'd me, and everybody, you're encouraged to DM both Alex and I. We respond. We like to continue the conversation there. But Breer is just, he's going for clicks. There's really no new information, and Kyler Murray, patience is going to be the key here, and take every report with a grain of salt. And to consider Kyler Murray, if he does hold out, nobody knows Cliff Kingsbury's offense more than Kyler Murray, and also consider that Joe Burrow was able to kind of jumpstart his season with missing most of the offseason training activities because of his injury. I know people want Kyler there, but until they figure things out, there is potential of him not showing up for the mini camps and all that stuff. So, but that's not to get people overwhelmed and more scared about this situation going south. Bo Brock, Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. There were a couple prospects that both Alex and I have been following closely that pretty much solidified what we were feeling about them with their performances at the NFL Combine, who you should absolutely be just head over heels for, potentially coming to the desert and joining the Arizona Cardinals. Let's get into that. But you don't need a scouting combine to figure out what the best tasting protein bar on the planet is. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar, and it's got all the nutritional benefits that you're going to want from any protein bar, but you don't have to compromise taste. It's where healthy, it's where tasty, those worlds absolutely collide. You can just replace candy bars with Built Bars and you'll be better for it. Most candy bars, 200 to 300 calories, while most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of muscle-packing protein. Save yourself some cash on this delicious treat. Go to Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15. My mom just said she bought herself some Built Bars. Welcome to the Built Bar Nation, Mama Brock. That's right. She's got herself the best tasting protein bar, and she saved herself some cash by using the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Can't get enough of the NFL draft. Really can't. Check out Locked On NFL, the Locked On NFL podcast all week long for more kind of recaps and takeaways from last week's Underwear Olympics in Indianapolis. Just incredible performances. And I'm trying to figure this out, Alex, before we get into the prospects that really impressed. I think that as far as the training and the preparation for the NFL draft, I think that these prospects are crushing these tests to where that's not necessarily the game speed they play. I don't think that the guys that are posting, the sub 4.3s, the sub 4.4s, the guys who are killing the cone drills, they're getting good at doing the drills. And it's now becoming like we're seeing records fall, but I don't think we necessarily have better prospects than we did before. Their training has just peaked.
I mean, video game numbers don't even start to describe it. You know, like people
Ohio State receivers, both sub 4.4 40s.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like when you have somebody that runs a 4.5 40, they're like, not as great as the rest of the class. It's like, What the hell are you talking about? Like, I mean, it's speed, but it's also, defensive linemen that are running 4.95s or 4.8s that are, upwards of 300 pounds. It's like, these are video game crazy numbers that we weren't even expecting. When you saw, what was John Ross 4.22, I think?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, it's funny how speed doesn't necessarily translate, especially with the wide receivers. It's who was it? It was on Fox Sports. TJ Hushmanzada, I think, is who said it. It doesn't matter how fast you can run; it matters how fast you can stop. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. It was through Rob Parker. I was listening to the Odd Couple. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. It's like your route running is almost more important, and your catchability in traffic is almost more important than how much you can run in a straight line. But yeah,
Sure.
like it's the big boys for me. It's
Andy
the offensive
Isabella.
and defensive lineman.
I think Andy Isabella. Think how
he
fast
did lead
that
the
kid.
nation in receiving. FCS.
But FCS. You don't really have to run precise routes to get open in that division. But if you're a Cardinals fan, take note of both of those Ohio State wide receivers. I think both of them would continue to look good in red. Olave, who ran a 4.29, and then Wilson, who's actually considered a better prospect than Olave. I mean, those are two guys that I think can play that outside position for the Cardinals or move into the slot, both over 6 feet. I don't know if that turns Steve Keim off. Hopefully it doesn't. But let's get to the big boys, because this is where, and you already kind of alluded to it, Jordan Davis out of Georgia. I mean, I think he would be a perfect fit for the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah.
I think after his performance, I don't think he falls to 23, but 6'7", 6'6", just tips the scales just over 360 pounds, and he's running a sub 4.9 40. It's absurd.
Yeah. It's so I've been watching a lot about him because, listen, I don't know all the college football players. I know Georgia's defense, their front seven, was the best that we've maybe seen in a long time. But, obviously Jordan Davis, he's been – I think Jordan Davis would be a good fit for enter all 32 NFL teams. Like, that's what every NFL team is looking at. Like,
yeah.
And this is where it's like, man, if you're at 26 and you want to move up to 19 to take him and give up a third or second round pick this year, that's where he could definitely go to a contender if he's not going to go in the top 10. The thing is, and I've been watching a lot about him and been listening a lot to pundits, draft pundits who know a lot more about me. He's a 2-down guy, and in passing downs, he's not going to be on the field. Okay, so when it comes to that, I don't think that should matter for the Cardinals, but I think that when it comes to where he's going to fall into an arm's reach of the Arizona Cardinals, but you can't justify moving up to draft him. Like, this isn't a Derek Brown to Carolina where you could have moved up to draft him one spot in 2 years ago. It's not that. This guy is an absolute machine. And yes, the crazy part about this is that with the Georgia, I want to ask you this, and we didn't talk about this before we cracked them, but the linebackers also, there's a bunch of linebackers from Georgia that, that are going to go in the first round. Is it an Isaiah Simmons effect for the linebackers because they have these monsters up front to give them free reign to get to the quarterback? Like, are people going to draft Georgia linebackers too high because they had three of the best down linemen in football last year? And Jordan Davis being one of them. Like, I don't care if he's a 2-down back. If he's there at 23, it's him or Zion Johnson. I am saying Zion Johnson out of Iowa to shore up the left side of the line as a guard. Him and DJ Humphries and Rodney Hudson on the left side. That's an all-pro front. That's an all-pro front on the left side of the line.
Yeah, it creates a strength, and it sure, it keeps a guy that you're going to invest a ton of money in Kyler Murray upright and healthy for the most part. Trayvon Walker is the edge from Georgia that you're talking about, and he's a freak, and he was a guy on Saturday that people just couldn't stop talking about. Jordan Davis he's not going to be, the Aaron Donald prototype. It's like Aaron Donald's undersized, nonstop motor. But as you said, Jordan Davis is going to be a rotational type guy. But as far as where he would fit into the rotation, it would be on those early downs. It would be on running downs. It would fix a big problem that the Arizona Cardinals had in slowing down opposing running backs. And then you talk about on passing situations, you would be able to put in a guy like Lecky Fotu or Rashard Lawrence or whoever it might be. But I think he fits what the Arizona Cardinals lack at the defensive tackle position. It could think like Vince Wilfork from the Patriots and the Texans back in the day. I think he'd be a great fit, but you can't disagree with the interior defensive line, interior offensive line. I don't think the Arizona Cardinals would do themselves a disservice by addressing those at 23 overall. Or could they trade back? Could somebody, if Davis falls, or one of these guys that impressed this past week, some team falls in love with them, and you can kind of create more assets because as much as Steve Keim misses in the draft, creating more assets just gives him more a chance to improve his batting average a little bit. If he's got a couple picks, he might be able to hit on one. He's just got more opportunity to do so.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see the vision of Steve Keim here in this draft in the way of this wide receiver depth for this draft makes last year look like there were no wide receivers taken.
Yeah.
And the year before the same way. So if he can hold on and watching this stuff, I'm having these cringies in my belly where it's like, he's going to take a wide receiver at 23. And I feel like this is the true last. I've been very hard on them, and I've screamed and I've yelled, okay? Mm-hmm. And I've told people they're wrong, and I apologize for that. And if he takes a wide receiver at 23, we're going to know that he is somewhat incapable of adapting. In my opinion, at least. Because listen, you can take a wide receiver in the second round, you can take a wide receiver in the third round. Okay, this year, definitely. If you look and you see a potential eat your vegetables pick at 23 and he punts, I don't know if I can trust him in the draft ever moving forward. And I know that you want him to take a wide, that you want is loosely defined. You think that taking Drake London or Garrett Wilson or somebody at 23, if they're there, will make this offense, take a step forward, especially Drake London. He's a perfect outside wide receiver. I mean, he's AJ Green as a 22-year-old. So I get it. And this is just retroactively going back 700 days from now when they took Isaiah Simmons instead of Tristan Wirfs.
Yeah. But my take on that really is, the keep it simple, stupid, or keep it simple, Steve. And I think I stole that from Blake Murphy, but it's like when you're struggling in baseball hitting, and it's just like, or in golf, it's just see ball, hit ball. You just simplify things. It's like, okay, there's an issue that you had. It was a huge issue down the stretch. You struggled in this area. Just take the best prospect at a position of need and just make the pick and let's get out of here. Find an impact maker. Just don't try to be the smartest guy in the room by taking somebody that nobody's heard of or didn't do as much scouting as you did. I think that the two spots we mentioned on both the lines, but if you can get a playmaker, and I'm not talking like if London's gone, if Wilson's gone, if Olive's gone, you don't go get Traylon Burke, who just ran a 4.55. That doesn't mean just take the next best guy. Then you're Philadelphia. Then you're just bringing guys for a position of need who aren't going to make an impact like a Jalen Reagor. Hopefully you don't miss out on the just next Justin Jefferson by doing so. But all right, we're going long here. Mm-hmm. The Giants have made a couple players available, or at least reportedly available. The Arizona Cardinals should be interested in both of them. Which one should they bring in? There's going to be props. There were props about the scouting combine. There's props throughout the offseason on some big moves that could be going down. There's already MVP odds up there. BetOnline.net is your number one spot for all the action you need. And as I mentioned, you've got college hoops gearing up towards the big dance. Conference tournament week is probably the sneaky best week of the betting season. BetOnline.net is your number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just hoops. It's not just the NFL offseason. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device. Learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen. So James Bradberry, a guy that we've seen the last couple seasons in the defensive secondary for the New York Giants, has been pretty impressive. I think he probably, his standards had a down year last year, but still a guy that can play the position at a high level. And then Saquon Barkley, the former, was in the conversation to be the top pick, second overall, right? A couple years ago by the New York Giants. They went with the running back instead of the quarterback in 2018, and he's been just riddled by injuries. But the talent is undeniable. Dual threat running back, the complete package that you want from the running back position. Both those guys are available, and I know Bradberry has been projected to pretty much command from the Giants a third round pick. And I think if you're the Arizona Cardinals, for a second consecutive offseason, you give up your third round pick to bring in a veteran that you can just plug and play. And I think Bradberry would be a great addition to this Arizona Cardinals team.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think both, because when you talked last segment about, need, the Cardinals have a need pretty much at every position. So It's really just determining which is the most important, or which is the most, which is at the front of the line to fill first. So let's frame it this way, because the Cardinals could use both, I think. Saquon, obviously, his value has diminished, but when he's on the field, he's still electric. I don't know how much of this has to do with Daniel Jones, with the offensive setup in New York. I'm not sure. What I do know is what the Cardinals did with James Conner last year. If they can replicate that with a younger running back who is at this point in his career, vastly more athletic and obviously has more of a burst.
Mm-hmm.
Let's ask it this way. I'm going to answer first, and I'll let you think. James Bradberry may be a second, but let's say just for fun here, third round pick, okay? Because Saquon Barkley, let's say, would you rather trade a third round pick for James Bradberry or Saquon Barkley? And I think conventional wisdom would say James Bradberry. I'm saying Saquon 100 times out of 100. And the reason why is he's not going to get Zeke money like we thought he was going to after his first season. I think that's pretty clear. He's missed so much time. He's missed so much time. And I think they haven't Arian fostered him there. They did year one, but most of the time at Penn State, that's what happened. Touch the ball 100 times a game. You're going to get injured. One of his injuries, the ACL, was a freak injury. He landed weird out of bounds. I remember I was watching it live. That was a day where Nick Bosa tore his ACL and Saquon and I don't know if they were playing each other. I don't know if it was the field, but I would say Saquon, because that he's not going to garner a whole bunch of money when you have to pay him. James Bradberry is going to be a guy that's going to be around for a long time, and he's going to make a lot of money every contract. That's where it is. And I know the Cardinals need a corner. I'd rather trade a third round pick for a running back. Don't need to draft one this year. And for sure, at least not in the first two rounds. And then for sure that if you can bring James Conner back and have Saquon still on his rookie scale deal and not have to pay him unless he goes balls to the wall, insane man this year, then you have a running back tandem for the future that could arguably be a top 5 or top 7 running back room in the league.
Yeah.
To couple with Kyler Murray.
Saquon would be playing on his 5th-year option, so you're right.
Well, he's been in the league 4 years already?
Yeah.
Holy crap.
But look, you just consider this. The Arizona Cardinals, every year under Cliff Kingsbury, have been a top 10 rushing team. And what he's been able to do with, Chase Edmonds has been in that backfield every season. But for the most part, he's been able to take Kenyon Drake, and what he was able to kind of squeeze out of Kenyon Drake, and Kenyon Drake was able to command on the free agent market, was I don't think anybody anticipated that. And then what James Conner was able to do in 1 year for the Arizona Cardinals last year is incredible. But the talent that Saquon Barkley has is even more impressive, is way better than those two guys. And to think of what he would be capable of doing in this offense, and how Cliff Kingsbury, for all you want to criticize him, and I don't think you can criticize him on this, is managing the workloads of his running backs and setting them up for success. A guy like Saquon Barkley needs that in his career to kind of prove that he's, not just his first season success story, and then beyond that isn't going to do much as far as his career goes. I think it would be great for the Arizona Cardinals, but as far as utilizing a third round pick, I think you have to do much like you did with Rodney Hudson. You bring in kind of the steady guy. You
Mhm.
bring in the guy that the veteran presence that you can rely upon, that you can put across from Byron Murphy, and you don't have to worry about the defensive secondary for the most part. Marco Wilson gets to get back on more of a favorable development
Yeah,
scale.
learning curve.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that Bradberry would be a slam dunk for him, especially in the NFC West with the passing attacks that they're going to face. But I don't think you can go wrong there. And the risk, like people would view Barkley as a riskier move, but the upside, like you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that would bring more upside, switching teams than Barkley across the NFL. He's that
Yeah.
talented.
I mean, see, only thing. So with Bradberry, this is last year of his deal also that I'm looking at Sport Track right now. Like
Yeah.
I don't have Pat Traina on speed dial, Locked On Giants. But if you're looking at James, and I know we're going long. I mean, we haven't talked in a while. Like if you're going James Bradberry, this would be a trade and extend immediately, right? Because his
Yeah.
salary cap is 21 mil this year. His cap is 21 mil. They ain't gonna have that. So
Right.
you trade from, you extend him, you give him an extra 3 years, and then you have a guy. If that's the case, I'm good with it. With Saquon Barkley, the 5th-year option, this is kind of like a James Conner thing,
Yeah.
where it's going to be a little bit more money, and so that's interesting. I mean, I would
Well,
still
you have the ability to just put as much mileage as you want on Saquon. Like you could bring him in and you could just ride him for a year.
Yeah,
What
but I
do you
mean,
have to-
but it doesn't work. He's injured all the time. Like he needs to be a ride. He needs to be a ride share guy. He's got to be Uber and not a taxi.
But
you know,
that's the scheme. I mean, they'll bring in somebody if it's not one of the guys back that was
I'd rather them
successful.
keep James Conner. I mean, if
Right.
it's going to be like, because you want steady, like I'd rather them run it back with Chase Edmonds and James Conner, even though Chase Edmonds is going to get Christian Kirk, running back money, like on the running back scale somewhere else. Like, isn't it weird that we just haven't talked about Chase Edmonds coming back at all?
It is odd.
So, but I mean, like, it depends on what you want. If you're going to trade for James Bradberry and you're going to extend him before he plays it down, I'd be more equipped to jump on board for that. If you're going to trade for somebody and Stephon Gilmore and just let him walk after, what the hell are we doing here? Keep the pick.
Yeah.
1 year for a 3rd-round pick is not how you build a team for the future. And hopefully Steve Keim can kind of shift and start to move in that direction.
Yeah, it just kind of fits what the Arizona Cardinals try to do. They look at these guys that can't be. Their teams are looking to part ways for whatever reason, like Hudson last season. Another one of those guys that we need to talk about probably tomorrow, Amari Cooper, going to hit the free agent market because it looks like he's done in Dallas because of his high cap number. The Arizona Cardinals wouldn't pull off a deal for him because of that. Another guy that'd be making 20+ season with his cap number next year. So
can I ask you a question? If
yeah.
and we're going around the globe here from Locked On, like, why wouldn't you try to facilitate something with Ezekiel Elliott and keep Amari Cooper? Like, your best running back is on the damn bench.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Zeke, his cap number, it's less.
It's lower.
No, he just can't navigate it. As far as dead money, there's an easy out in the contract for Amari Cooper. And it's like Cooper really strikes me as a Tyrann Mathieu situation where they bit off more they can chew contract wise just a year ago. And instead of trying to like restructure, have any kind of outs, the only move they have is to release the guy. And it looks like that's what's going to happen in some team. I think that the Cardinals actually benefit from a guy like Cooper just being on the open market, that some of these other wide receivers' numbers might go down because people would maybe pursue Cooper instead of some other guys that the Arizona Cardinals can maybe have a conversation with. Then otherwise they wouldn't be able to negotiate with. So we'll see what happens, man. We're a week away from it. We'll get more into the Cooper conversation tomorrow, plus more takeaways from the NFL Combine. It officially wraps up today. We apologize for the late episode time today, but we got you going. We're your team every day. Cardinals news all offseason long. Keep it here on Locked On Cardinals, at Locked On AZCards, on Twitter, at Clancy's Corner. Follow Alex and follow me at Bob Brock. Easiest way to find it. Have a great rest of your Monday. We will talk to you on Tuesday, the new edition of the podcast. Now check out Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy, Eric Crocker have their latest mock draft for you.
They're on fire over there.
Unreal.